Ladies and gentlemen, I guess all of you are awake. As we return from our lunch break, we have an intriguing session lined up that's incredibly vital for any growing organization. The topic for our fifth session of the day is hiring leaders who deliver. Because, after all, an organization is only as good as its leaders. It's a privilege to introduce our esteemed speakers for this session. First, we have Ms. Ann Prabhu of Hunt Partners. As a senior partner at one of India's premier leadership consulting firms, Ms. Prabhu has spent years honing her expertise in leadership hiring. Her deep understanding of what makes a leader truly effective has helped numerous organizations find the right talent to drive their growth and success. Our second speaker is Ms. Sakshi Kapahi of OMAM Consultants. As the director at OMAM, a renowned name in the field of executive search, Ms. Kapahi's contribution to the talent acquisition landscape has been significant. Her insights into leadership hiring, based on her rich experience and nuanced understanding of the industry, promise to enlighten us all. Guiding this enriching discussion will be our moderator, Mr. Prashant Pachisia, the managing director of TiEcon Consulting. With years of experience in workforce management and talent acquisition, Mr. Pachisia's expertise will significantly augment our understanding of the topic at hand. Together, they bring a wealth of knowledge and practical wisdom on how to identify, attract, and hire leaders who can truly deliver. As we delve into our sixth session at TiEcon Kolkata 2023, hiring leaders who deliver, let's gear up for a session that promises to transform our understanding of leadership hiring. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ms. Ann Prabhu, Ms. Sakshi Kapahi, and Mr. Prashant Pachisia.
First of all, I would like to start with a big thanks to the TiEcon fraternity for actually thinking about this topic, because it is such a pertinent topic for a city like Calcutta, where the landscape of the city entrepreneurs are mostly founder-driven, directors, owners-led companies. So hiring leader is something I think we aspire for as a country, as a city, but I don't think so too many companies have actually gone into doing it. And hence, I think this learning coming from Ann and Sakshi would be a very, very big learning for us as to how do we take up this issue. Hiring leaders is easily said than done, and hence I think we will be able to learn a lot from you. To start with, I think the format that I have thought of is that I'll ask a question and both of them can give their perspectives. I actually happened to talk to them a little while back and I realized that both of them carry different perspectives of the same problem. So it'll be a lot of learning for us. So first of all, let me decipher the sentence, hiring leaders who deliver. That's important. So I think this is two problem statements in one sentence. Hiring leaders is one problem and leaders who deliver. So, defining delivery, what is expectations and things like that is another set of problems. So there are basically two opportunities. One is to be able to hire effectively and the other is to create parameters, benchmarks of what delivery we expect them. So there are two different problems. So that is one sentence, Abhishek, you must have thought of, but I possibly, and it's very important actually that we get that right. With that, let me start with asking the one question as to what is it that is different in a founder, owner, director than a professional leader? How do you basically create that understanding? When do you need a leader, an external person to come and help you run the organization? In what stage of your company or your career do you think you should look at hiring a leader and not being a leader yourself or driving the daily day-to-day aspects?
So one is, do we need to hire or not, right? So when a leader or when a founder has started the organization, clearly there is a vision. There's huge amount of passion. There's huge tenacity. And it's this passion and vision on the basis of which he has also attracted a few people because when you start, there's nothing to show, right? So it's on the basis of your own ability and your own brand and your own vision that you bring in a leader. So at what stage? So once there is a product market fit, once you have enough customers and there is a brand which has got built to some extent and you want to scale up, that's the stage when you actually look at, am I able to do it, or should I bring a leader from outside? So it's not necessarily that one needs to bring somebody from outside, at least as a CEO, right? We've seen organizations which have scaled up with the CEO, with the founder itself, because the skills which are needed to start and the skills which are needed to scale are two different sets of skills, right? Does the leader have that? And it could so be that he has also transitioned to that phase and he's able to bring that at that stage, and he might have an interest to do that as well. But there could be a case where you don't have that. So I think that really determines, because when you're scaling up, it's about ensuring that you're also building the organization to succeed in a scale-up environment, putting in place systems, processes, putting in place a structure, bringing in the second level team. I think so what happens is that you could have a situation where you don't bring in the founder can be the CEO, but there is need for functional leaders. So that's what I would say, that really determines who you bring in, at what level, and basis the business plan as well.
Sakshi, your take on?
Yeah, so great point, Anne. And just adding to that, right, it's saying, where is the firm going, short term and long term? It doesn't matter whether it's promoter run or there's a professional CEO. It's about saying what is the vision and how do you assess that the current talent can execute that vision, or do we need to bring in help from outside? For example, an absolutely new vertical, a pivot or a digitalization, your team might see that that's important, but they might not have the necessary skill sets. Or you've decided you want to expand globally and you might not have that. So I think the first thing is going back to the drawing board and saying, where are we going? And then getting people versus jumping the gun and saying, hey, VCs are coming on board, let's get some good people from top companies and we have leaders.
Interesting. So just to take it, while you answered a bit, what are the skills that one needs to look at when you hire or possibly groom your internal workforce, senior leadership into leadership? What are the skills that you should look? Because founders usually have that skill, as you rightly said, to start up, but to scale up is the skill that you need. So what do you look for? How do you get that guy? What is that you're looking for in that person?
Yeah, so first of all, today, given the world which is so dynamic, uncertain, there are multiple moving parts, you're in any position, generally, you're looking for a couple of capabilities, right? One is, Srikanth spoke about it in the morning, learning agility. Because what you have today may not be required for tomorrow. So how is the individual possessing that quality to scale up to the next level? So I would say that's one which is a skill which is today looked at deeply. The second one is also ambition, right? When you're bringing in somebody, is he aligned with the ambition, and does he have that ambition to scale up? So these are two basic skills, but more than that, we know with scale up comes systems, processes, structures, etc. So I think that's a basic. When you bring somebody from outside, you do want that experience to come in, because if the founder has started something and built it, he may not have that experience already with him.
Sakshi, what would you?
So, like she said, technical skills are easy. You map them out and you say, these are the specifications that I want the person to come in with. It's the behavioral and the cultural fit that becomes very difficult to assess and the most important. And what usually we say is that, you hire a CEO because of his technical fitment, but you fire him because of the lack of chemistry with the promoter.
Interesting, yeah.
So are you delving into that and seeing that, do we share the same value system? Do we have the same vision? Can we translate our vision and make sure that the other person is also on board before we hire them? So, like we were talking earlier, it's not a 1-hour interview saying checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. There's a lot of nuances in it. And it begins with the introspection, having clarity as the promoter, saying, what do I want? Why do I want it? And how am I conveying that to any leader, internal or external?
That's important. So there are multiple options. I be and remain as a leader. I groom somebody internally who's got the skills or possibly can be groomed, knows the systems better, or an external force. External force from competition, external force from maybe another landscape. Which is the preferred source? How do you identify where do you want your next leader from? I mean, is there something, some formula, some thought behind it?
If I can take that. There shouldn't be a formula. It's need specific, situation specific. You're at a particular scale where you need someone who can hit the ground running, who understands that particular domain, then you go to competition. Right? But we also say that beyond a point. So for example, when we are hiring, we say don't take more than 2 or 3 people from the same company. Okay. You don't want to create another same, right? You're creating your own unique identity. Till you kill ideas and everyone will become the same next, whoever you got from. So then you say, okay, after that, who are the skill sets that I'm hiring for versus the business set that I particularly hired for. And the third is when you're growing, maybe you can't do it, but at some point you also have to say, am I creating a talent pipeline at each stage? Are my people also seeing that there's growth opportunity for them? So you have to keep all these, and there's no formula for talent. Unfortunately, people think that this is the right formula. It's a constantly evolving art and science depending on where you are, where your company is, where the market is.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. And you would?
Yeah, absolutely. I think each situation, each context determines. You create a strategy based on that, right? What's required to be done? What's the skill set that is required? And overlaying that, I mean, do you have it internally? Do I need to bring it from outside? And that really, and within that outside, which is the place? Which would be good? And which are the places which would be good for me to look at? There's always this context of, which Sakshi mentioned, the culture, what I can offer as well. I think that's also a very important point, because when you bring talent, each talent also comes at a cost, right? So keep that in mind as well, because the demands of what the person could bring in can be several. Normally we get a list of things. I think what one needs to do is actually differentiate between what's a must-have and what's a good-to-have, and focus on that. Every person comes with something and also doesn't bring something. So looking for the perfect fit will only get you a compromise candidate, frankly. So, yeah.
Interesting. We've discussed why we should hire and in the skills that required. Now, is there any process? I mean, what is the way to go about it? Do we look at an external help to identify potential in our own organization, or should we internally look at what is the process? How do you go about hiring a leader? What needs to be done? As an organization, if I felt that I think I have outgrown, or possibly I need somebody as a professional or an expert to lead my organization, how do I go about it? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say that this process is the most important thing in the entire hiring, right? How do you assess what you want? We've seen that there have been founders, there have been leaders who also have had that knack of hiring the right people. Azim Premji was one, whether it was Ashok Suta, Subrato Bakshi, Vivek Paul. He was able to hire a lot of good talent. So just having that ability to understand what is that secret sauce which I need to bring in is important. So quite often we forget that the person who's hiring, who's making the decision, it's a huge responsibility. Is that person the right person to make the decision, right? And if not, who can I get involved in that? When it comes to actually identifying or assessing, we say that assessment is multi-dimensional. There's no one thing that can actually tell you what the person possesses. It's also said that an interview is a conversation between two liars, right? So the more you can disclose, the more you can create an environment where there is authenticity, the more you can peel through the surface. And quite often, this doesn't happen in one conversation. The first is just that initial conversation. So assessment is a deep process. One needs to peel through the layers. One needs to invest time. We've seen that even the thought of hiring, people meet over a period of time, right? So just leaving it to a quick hire, especially when they're high impact roles, doesn't work so well. So there is the interview. We use psychometric, because psychometric can also tell you what are some of the strengths, what are some of the derailers, what are some of the motivators and things like that, which you also bring into the table, bring into the discussion for your assessment. And the third, which we believe is super important, is the referencing, right? In earlier days, you would get from your network people who would refer names and people who are credible, sources who understand what you need and who believe that they could fit in. Today, we use referencing hugely, because while in an interview, everyone's trying to be their best, somebody who knows the person over a period of time, who's seen the person, who's seen what the derailers are, how is the individual. Keep in mind that we always have this set of what's important to us, both in terms of personality, culture, performance. I think the performance is the easiest thing, right? If the person has risen to a level, he has succeeded. But what are the learnings he's derived from the performance? What are the learnings from the failures? Generally, is it just about experience? And what kind of experiences? Because when a person becomes a leader, it's not like one fine day he's got a promotion and that happens. Career development happens through the experiences one has had in their life. So talking about all those experiences, bringing all of this together, and then deciding, I think that helps you make a better decision.
Good. And Sakshi, you would have anything to add?
So, we look at it as saying that your leadership team is a reflection of you and your board. So did you first sit back and say, why do I need a person or a team? How clear am I on what is it that I expect from them? Sometimes you'll say, I just want them to maintain business. I'm the largest market shareholder, keep me the largest market shareholder. Or saying that I need innovation, or whatever it is. How clear are you? Second is saying, why should they join you? Are you going to bring someone and set them up for success? Or are you going to say, aao bhai, dekhe tum kya kar sakte ho? That's a very wrong approach to bringing in talent at any level, right? Then you go out and say, okay, and then the question is, why should they join you? Have you thought about what is your culture, what is your fabric, what is the motivation for a good candidate to join you, and will they be able to succeed in your environment? We were talking about this before. We get a lot of calls saying, HUL ka banda de do, Lombard se de do, मेरे को ही चाहिए, बस. But you know what? Those companies created institutions that, to her point earlier, created a pipeline of talent. Nobody says, I want to become that. And just because you plucked a few flowers from somewhere doesn't give you a garden, You need to put that in place. Then once you've sorted that out, then you can get into, do I need to do a psychometric? Do I need to do a behavioral interview? Do I need to do case studies? Today you have a lot of CEO case study formats. But those are all tools that will enable you. They are not going to solve for you and say yes or no, So I think those are the things that we constantly ask, saying, what are you ready for? Someone's going to come. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to hire them? What are your expectations from them? Before you get into what process you want to follow.
Interesting. I'm coming back to from your sentence that I pick up. Are you ready for? Because I think once you've onboarded or identified a guy, or somebody to come and lead your organization. You've always been hands-on. As a founder, director, you've been running the show, you know how things are done. The next layer reports to you. But now you have to somebody else who would do what you... So how do you prepare yourself? How do you prepare? What are the changes and the team? That they should not come running to you for everything and there's somebody else that they need to. How do you prepare? What is the ecosystem? I think that also is an important... One of the problems of founders are to let go, to be able to believe that somebody else can do the job that I've been doing. How do you prepare ourselves to be able to handle that? I think a lot of us must be struggling with that problem for sure.
So I think even Prashant in the morning session was talking about it, right?
Yeah.
That you keep talking. Self-awareness is the first most important thing. But when you're hiring someone, you as the promoter, the person who's coming on board, and the team, all three are going to face a lot of change. Are we ready for that change, right? And the first thing comes from the promoter, right? And that where is the discipline? Have we said how we're going to set expectations? How we're going to step back? Like you said, the team comes running saying, I've always reported to Sir for the last 20 years. Now I'm not going to, report to some external guy who's just come in.
How much of business does he know?
हाँ, उसको क्या पता? हम तो बैठे हैं यहाँ पे इतने साल से ये नया आया है. We hear all that, and it's very fair. So, and you want to also make your team comfortable. There will be resistance, and that's okay. I think the idea that everyone will be happy day one is a myth. But if you're clear on the systems, processes, if you've defined everything, and the biggest challenge with promoters is that self-discipline. Yes, you can do the job better. You can sell better. It's your baby. It's your business. You'll crack the deal. But if you keep cracking every deal, then what will the person that you've hired do? Let them also grow and get to their job, right? And don't compare them to yourself. They'll never be 100% you.
True. Interesting. And your perspectives?
So usually there's a huge high when somebody is joining, right? But at that stage, it's only 50% of the job done. Laying out what will create success and investing in that process and the entire integration, transition is equally important. Normally 2-3 months based on the business and what the person comes with is spent in listening, in understanding the context, in meeting the board, in meeting spending time with the suppliers, the clients, whoever is there in the ecosystem. I think that's an important point, and that's a very important part of the process of integration. The person comes because they know what needs to be done on a broad perspective. How is this organization really typically making decisions, right? All those softer aspects. What would work? If I need to bring in change, should it be a quick change? Should it be incremental change? What are the fallouts of that? Would the board and the founder be ready for that? Because with every way, with any aspect of change, there are some fallouts. So understanding all of that, allowing for that time. The other important thing you spoke about, Sakshi spoke about, is while the promoter or the founder is giving up an aspect of the role. So clearly, there needs, setting the ground for what kind of a system do I need for communication. A new leader who comes inside, it's most discomforting. It leads to lack of trust if there's constantly checking, right? So laying it out ahead, saying that this will be the conversations we'll have, this is the structure at these periods of time, or whatever, and this is what we can be updated about. Things like that. Keeping it also a very interactive process, because today's time, it's not about control and command, right? I create this. Most of our clients are also saying that let's discuss. This is what, even before joining. So when you come on board, this is the plan I have for you. So what do you think about it? Or is there something else we can bring in? So the more interaction there is, the more engagement there is, you'll bring the best to make sure it is an effective transition.
Yeah, assuming that the hiring is done, transition is done, handholding is done, how do we create a clear-cut timeline of expectation. Usually, when we hire an external guy, I think magic will happen, right? मैं नहीं कर पाया उसको इसीलिए तो लिया था and all that. So how do you create an expectation which both the ends understand that this is expected out of me, this is the timeline? Is there a method to that? Is there something, because usually it's like, oh, I have given up because I expected you to bring my 5 crore to 100 crores in 2 years. So is there something that you will give us as a guiding line as to how do we create the ecosystem for expectations and delivery?
Yeah. When it comes to any target or when it comes to anything that needs to be delivered, right, there are lead factors and there are lag factors. So when it comes to the lag factors, that does take time, but it's usually within the first 2-3 months, and by the end of that transition period or the integration period, the person is in a position to actually also put this down, in, especially if it's a CEO role. What's the business plan? What's the expectation? What do I expect to do? What do I need to be able to do that, right? Because there could be costs, there could be investments which are required. So what is possible? Because it all comes with, it's not just that, like you said, magic happens. So, and I would still emphasize that the most important thing is to have an engaged process. The more engaged it is, the more alignment there is. And even if there isn't an issue, because if you have a good equation, have good conversations, you can keep changing, right? It's not as if plans exist forever or it's cut in stone.
So adding to that, right, we recommend that for the very senior leaders, it starts before hiring the person on a broad scale so that the expectations are set. And on both sides, the idea that you will interview the candidate and ask for all the information, but you will not share anything doesn't work. So, picking up from what she said, you want the guy to go from 5 to 100. Do you have capital plans ready for that? Saying I'll think about it doesn't work. So how will you also enable the person to reach that growth? Is something that we actually say should be discussed before. Maybe not the specifics for confidentiality, but broad structure of saying, these are the plans, these are the expectations, this is the growth, this is what you'll be expected to do. And have a rough sketch of saying what the 60, 90, 360 or 3-year plan will look like. And we also ask the candidates, right, that what is the support that you need from the promoters? Right? Is it market direction? Is it capital? Is it something else? The fine-tuning can happen, to Anne's point, after the 3-6 months of coming on board and really understanding the depth. But both sides have to honestly put on the table. And I'll give you an example. We had a CEO role where it was a business from scratch. And they loved the candidate loved the promoters. But at the end of the day, he said, Sakshi, this is going to take a lot of work. And this is a job where the business opportunity exists, but I'll have to work 15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. At this stage in my life, I don't want to do it. And I appreciate that, and the client also appreciates that, saying that this happened before. Yeah. If this had sort of happened later, it would have been very disappointing for sort of both sides. Exactly. And it's okay to say that. I mean, this whole discussion of we'll work 4 hours a day and I want balance. Businesses don't get built on that. It takes a lot of sweat, hard work, and time. So it's good to have those discussions also. And then, as they come, they learn, give them 3 to 6 months to soak in, and then start putting in expectations, to Anne's point, right? That this is going to be a dialogue. This is how we're going to do your reviews. This is how the process will be set up. So the problem is either promoters become completely distant and detached, or they micromanage. That balance has to come from both sides.
Important, yeah. I know time's up. Last question. I have to skip a few because I think I wanted a lot of information from you both. Having hired, possibly tried, given some time, you had skill gaps, and that's why you hired an external leader or you groomed. As a founder, you realize that. But what happens in some stage of the evolution that you realize that this guy is not meeting the skill gap? You evaluate maybe 1 year later, you give that person a time. How do you handle that? Or maybe the person scaled up to the expected levels, but he's not able to take the organization from growth A to B, B to C. I mean, he could take it from you from A to B, but he's not able to take it to C. So how do you handle that? Because if I reach a saturation point and learning curve, maybe that person is also getting complacent. How do we handle that situation? Maybe he didn't deliver, or he delivered but to the extent that he could and not able to take it up to the next level. But as a founder, you know the company can go to the next level. But how do you handle that? So basically, how do you create an exit mechanism or a learning curve or what? I mean, how do you handle that? Complicated problem though.
So I would say that usually when there is a good discussion, it's not as a one day you discover that things are not working out, right? The writing is on the wall. If it's not working out, it's not working out. So you do have that conversation. You do give time. You do see if there's change. Otherwise, it's normally there's enough time which is given and it's communicated. And I guess people are mature enough to understand, and one can still part as friends. Yeah.
But you had a different take on that. No, interesting perspective you got.
No,
yeah.
so that was a little different from this, saying that we do have a team that comes in to fire people, but that's an extreme situation where you have to let go, and sometimes it's good to have an independent party who comes in and helps. It's not.
You have a solution around it. You have somebody who takes up the mandate from you and goes and communicates.
So it's not as fancy as the George Clooney you're fired, but there's a process to it. There's a transition saying that how do you bring in someone? What is the risk that you need to take in when a leader is exiting?
Yeah.
Ideally, to Anne's point, the situation is that you've built a performance-based culture where leaders themselves realize that either they're shaping up or saying, look, I think I've plateaued out and I can't do it. But on the other side, we have these also, and those are the calls that the promoters have to take.
Thank you for such an enlightening. I think we have a lot of questions. I'm sure I have lots. I'm sure if somebody has, we are available at Sapphire.
No, we're just going to step out and take it
We're
off.
going to step out in case anyone has questions. Anne and Sakshi are there to help us navigate hiring a leader and understanding what a leader is and how do we make delivery mechanism around it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prashant.
Thanks, Prashant.
Let's now honor Ms. Anne Prabhu and Ms. Sakshi Kapahi for sharing their wisdom on hiring leaders who deliver, and Mr. Prashant Pachisia for his excellent moderation. I call upon Mr. Bimal Patwari, President TiE Kolkata, along with Mr. Abhishek Rungta, Founder and CEO INT, to please present the mementos.